We good? All right, Board of Aldermen work sessions now called to order. First item on the agenda is discussion of the 5-year capital improvement plan. Stephen. Got it all set up. Perfect.
All right,
It is technology, you may not.
hear me over Zoom and everything sound okay? Okay. All right, tonight we'll take our initial look at the fiscal year 2024 through 2028 capital improvement plan. This is the proposed city 5-year capital improvement plan. And during this time, we're going to take a look at all the budgeted funds that allocate resources towards the projects. We'll take time to look at the cash flows for each fund. And also this is a time to provide your feedback and input into the prioritization of the projects and really an opportunity for us staff to hear your feedback on the projects. Let me see here. Clicker. Yeah. Well, there we go. Okay. So a brief discussion on the background of the development of the CIP. The development of this plan really starts with an internal staff review with myself, Cynthia, and the department directors. That review starts in February each year when we go to do the budget process. We took a look at our current needs for capital improvements around the city, and we identify those needs and start putting them into the plan and eventually prioritize those in April with our cash flows. So once we have about 6 months of fiscal data, when we provide that to you in the budget update, we look at how revenues are coming in, especially in those 3 special sales tax funds. And that becomes the basis and the foundation for starting to plug those projects into those funds, given the resources that they have. Then in May and June, we come to the board with the CIP proposal, and that's when we look for your input and feedback. And then in October, we approve our 5-year plan in conjunction with the budget. Some quick updates on the 5-year CIP and what has changed from the previous. One of the big items you're going to see in this year's CIP, and I'll skip down here to the second bullet. We've prioritized projects that have the approved MARC transportation funding. The board's approved several resolutions to accept federal transportation funds from MARC to help fund projects within the CIP. And so we'll talk about those here in the next couple slides, and I'll point out the funds that are helping fund those projects. You'll remember George Butler Associates came and helped the city with a stormwater assessment. And so those projects have been slotted into the Park and Stormwater Sales Tax Fund based upon Public Works staff review of the recommendations from the plan. And then you'll recall May 17th, the board held a retreat, and based upon the priorities and the projects designated at that retreat, we've worked those into the CIP. So you'll see in the general fund tonight, we've inputted the wayfinding signage program that Gina Pate, our assistant city administrator, brought to you in a previous work session. A little bit about the MARC grants. You'll recall the board approved 3 independent resolutions on these MARC grants. One for First and Bridge Roundabout, the first phase of the Riverwalk Park and Trail, and Second Creek Sidewalks. So that's a grand total there of $2.4 million in secured funding. And then when we go to the next slide, you can see what the fiscal impact of the funding is. When you work through the table, each of these projects have an engineering and construction estimate and then a total project estimate. And so when you tally those amounts together, you're coming up with over $5 million in total project cost. So about half of that will be funded by these MARC revenues. So again, about 50% of the expense, 45 to 50% is covered by these MARC revenues, which really gives for a good value and a less total net cost to the city. We'll talk about where these projects fall and how they'll be funded in terms of the net cost of the city as we go through the PowerPoint. Talk about the general fund here and what we have set up for the 5-year CIP. From the last work session, the board consented to putting $100,000 annually into the general fund for the wayfinding program. And you'll see as we go through this PowerPoint, everything that's in that solid green is new to this year, this 5-year CIP edition, compared to the previous 5-year. As we work down, we have multiple funding sources for engineering for our MARC projects. We also have additional overlay and sidewalk programming funds that'll be in the fiscal year 2025 budget. So together, we're looking at over $1 million in contributed funds coming from the general fund for the 5-year CIP. Last meeting, we talked about the general fund cash flow, and both Cynthia and I addressed the decline in the cash flow and talked about future ballot initiatives. With some of these priorities and additional projects, we're seeing that projected decline. Again, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, we still have a number of factors to consider. Projections from our marijuana sales tax, surging sales tax projections. So as we get better revenue sources on that, we'll keep the board updated to that projected cash flow and what our predicted reserve levels are. We also do have a number of pending CIP projects. Cynthia provided an update to the board last meeting about these pending costs, including costs for our new police station, an additional $500,000 for the animal control facility, and then our parks building and renovation of City Hall. We've also added a tornado sirens item onto there with an unknown cost, but all of those projects still pending and still dependent on a funding source.
Can I ask a question? On the tornado sirens, with that being maybe something in the future, an unknown cost, are you looking at replacing some we have or adding more since the city's grown?
Might let Chief speak to that. He can provide some information on the tornado sirens.
Yeah, we're really early into looking at this. The company's come out, they sized up the entire city, they looked at every location. It's probably gonna be a combination of both.
Okay.
Project to replace the system, expand the system for better coverage, taking into consideration terrain, topography, and some things that were overlooked in the original installation by the original vendor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, before I move on to talk about the water and sewer fund, is there any other questions from the board on these general fund projects that we just looked at? If not, I'll move on and talk about the combined water and wastewater fund. I'll get my clicker to work here. Come on. Go. Whoop. Okay. So we'll move on to that. You can see, put in a couple pictures here of CIP projects that the city is in progress of completing this year. It includes the raw water pump station, and there's the valve vault pictured in the aerobic digester. So we've made great progress on those projects this year. Want to talk, before we get into the financials, I just want to talk about visually what some of these improvements really look like. I think it's important to highlight what the improvements look like and kind of what the transformation process is. You can see on the left side of this water line replacement project slide, we've got corroded and aging water line segments, and you can see, I'm right, there we go. Thanks. Okay. You can see on the left-hand side, those are cross sections that our Public Works Director, Chuck Souls, has pulled from some of the breaks that have occurred over the years. And you can see the high amount of corrosion and kind of the degradation of the water line. And on the right, we've got a couple pictures of water line replacements that the city's worked on this year. So these are the types of improvements that are, again, driving our CIP for the next 1 to 3 years on top of the expansion projects. But they're critically important to bringing up pressures so that residents can enjoy better water volumes and better services throughout the city related to delivery of water. Might just have to advance it for me. Why it's not working. Okay. Another program that we're hard at work on is the Cured in Place and Manhole Rehabilitation Program. You can see on the left a photo of the sewer relining process where we're actually putting a sock down into the line, which is heated up and then hardened in order to provide more structurally sound wastewater mains. And then on the right, we have our manhole rehab and relining program, which is giving structural rigidity and integrity to the manholes. So again, another program that we're working through to enhance our wastewater infrastructure. And then the last one here. Again, this is a issue that we've continued to deal with. We have wipes and flush debris that end up in our wastewater treatment plant. You can see on the left coming out of this decanter that our operations manager, Dave Schruger's standing next to. You've got a large amount of debris that's clogged that up and caused a maintenance issue. One way we're trying to address your CIP is putting a Headworks bar screen in there, which can reduce the negative effects of that flush debris and wipe. But again, this has been an issue certainly for a long time and since the beginning of the pandemic with wipes and flush debris clogging up the system and creating maintenance and repair issues over time. So with that, let's get into the project table. You'll see here as we work down fiscal year 2024, Alderman Hartman, you pointed this out at a meeting ago, the 144th Street lift station, we've moved that into our 2024 column with the condemnation process. We won't get to that project until the beginning of the next fiscal year. New projects are outlined in green, and we've got a number of water line replacements that we'll continue to work on. Lift station engineering, the bar screen that I just showed in the previous slide is on there in green at 325. And then our Stone Bridge lift station construction and engineering. So next year, just in our water and sewer fund, we'd be looking at 8.6 million in planned expenditures for the fund. And then moving on to the next section of 4 years, we have the construction of the lift station by McDonald's and Central Bank, and then a number of other larger projects as we get out into the next 3 to 4 years, which includes plant expansion engineering and wastewater plant construction. So some of those more major water and wastewater projects we're starting to prepare for financially and internally in our planning processes. With that comes an update to our utility rate study, and we'll talk about rates and fees on July 18th related to the water and sewer fund. But this is just kind of a snapshot of what the water and sewer fund looks like over time. And there's really 3 main points to look at when you look at the chart. The first one is your dark blue operations and maintenance. You can see it's got a little bit of an increase over time running out to 2032. This is something that runs in tandem with inflation and just increased expense for operation and maintenance costs. They're going to go up over time. We looked at the expansion projects in the previous table and talked about in the next 3 to 4 years, we'll start construction on those expansion projects. That will essentially mean that we're going to have to incur some debt service, incur some COP debt to fund those projects. And so you can see the light green bar is going to increase in over time as well. Your magenta bar or dark purple bar, whatever color you want to call it, are pay with cash, pay as you go. Capital projects stays pretty consistent over time, but it certainly doesn't decrease as we continue to do the improvements around the city with the cash on hand that we have. The cash flow for the water and sewer fund at its lowest point, looking at our utility rate study, we're expecting to maybe dip just below the reserve line in 2027. But again, that's still 4 years away at this point. So that projection can easily change, but we're expected to retain our reserves through the next 5 years. And then real quick here, we also have impact fees that we charge for development and new construction on homes. And those impact fees are going to help with our capacity projects. So our Maple Lane and River Crossing water line will allocate $700,000 in water impact fees to help pay for that project. And then on the wastewater side, you can see there's our wastewater treatment plant, an aerial view of it. We're going to use just over $1 million in wastewater impact fees to help fund the engineering for the wastewater plant expansion. So we're going to really put those impact fees to work in 2024 to help out with our non-impact cash funding streams.
Stephen, real quick,
Yeah.
on page, I think it was slide 16, that about the utility rate study.
Yeah.
The pieces that showed us dipping below in 2027.
Yeah.
That one right there, does that include the planned rate increases?
It does, yes. It does include planned rate increases over time, and we'll talk a little bit more about kind of what those rate increases are gonna look like on July 18th. But that's how the model works. We put in all those CIP projects that we just looked at, put in our operational and maintenance expenses, put inflationary measures into it. And then we put the rates needed to sustain an adequate amount of reserve. And, you know, basically dropping right below the reserve level of, it's about $800,000 to $900,000. It's not a major red flag at this point because it's still 4 years out, but it's something I want to keep the eye on to make sure that we're not getting in any trouble at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on water and sewer? Okay. All right, let's talk about the special sales tax funds that the city has. The first one we'll talk about is the transportation sales tax fund. And its primary purpose is to have funds to maintain and repair our road systems in Smithville. And you can see there's a mill and overlay process going on there and a hot patching process going on. And just want to talk about some of the progress we're making. A couple of programs that we have for 2023 include the street maintenance program, which is funded in the amount of $400,000, working with pavement management to complete that work. And then on the left-hand side, you can see we have sidewalks that are falling in disrepair, working with Legacy Underground for about $25,000 to get that work done this year. And so we continue to make strides in enhancing our PCI and improving our roads and sidewalks in the city. We also discussed in the previous work session, looking at a 1/4 cent sales tax increase to further fund the street maintenance program and improve our streets and sidewalks in the city. This is our 5-year plan for the transportation sales tax fund. You can see on top, it includes an allocated amount for the overlay program each year going out to 2028, as well as the sidewalk program. Next year, one of the big projects that we'll be funding, which is gonna get that $500,000 in reimbursable funds there, is the commercial street sidewalks construction. So with the total cost of $750,000 and a reimbursement of $500, it results in a net cost to the city of just $250,000. Talked about some of the MARC projects earlier tonight in the PowerPoint. You can see in green, we have some of those, that 80% of construction covered by transportation sales tax for the roundabout, and then our reimbursement grant. And then as we go down the line in 2028, depending on board direction, we'll look at more grant opportunities or project funding for 180th Street roundabout and Pope Lane connection. The 5-year forecast for the transportation sales tax, really the kind of the tough part of this year, looking at this 5-year graph would be 2024, looking at fund balance that drops just below $30,000. Sales taxes performed very well this year. So if there's any necessary adjustments we need to make for next year, we'll be exploring those options, but we'll run it down pretty close next year on this 5-year chart. In other years, we'll have higher fund balances to take care of change orders and project inflation. Can you advance it? Talk about the capital improvement sales tax fund next. You can see there's the streetscape phase 3 design and working on that this summer, getting the construction going. The 5-year plan is going to start out with our annual transfer to debt service that we have to pay with our capital improvement sales tax. This is our first obligation for the series 2018 and 2019 bonds that were issued for the Main Street Trail and Streetscape Phase 1. And then you can see some of the big mark projects that I talked about earlier are going to get funded out of this sales tax. We're going to put a large portion of the Second Creek sidewalks in here, Riverwalk and Trail project. And this fund would also be the recipient of those reimbursement revenues to offset the cost. As we move out into 2027 and 2028, given any board direction, we'll look at 180th and Eagle Parkway, Pope Lane, and continue pursuing possible grant reimbursements for those per board direction. The 5-year forecast, projected cash flow, again, 2024 with some of those mark projects coming online is kind of a pinch point, but we'll watch that. The sales taxes come in very well, but we may run that cash flow down to about $20,000. So we really built this to get as much as we could out of each fund, but I'm pretty hopeful that we'll perform better than the numbers we see there. And then the last fund I'll talk about for the CIP is our Park and Stormwater Sales Tax Fund. You can see we have the beautiful Diamond Crest Neighborhood Park on the left there, and some of the stormwater improvements on streetscape that we've made down by Heritage Park. Oh, okay. Split the Park and Stormwater Sales Tax Fund table into 2 slides here. So this first slide you're seeing is our 2024 through 2025. A couple of projects that we've crossed out: Heritage Park, 2 shelters. We've crossed those out of the CIP at this time, and then our Emerald Ridge grant reimbursement. Right now, what we're looking at and talking with our Parks and Rec director is allocating the $450,000 without a grant reimbursement for Emerald Ridge Neighborhood Park. And then we're still pursuing a grant reimbursement for what we now call the OK Railroad Trail Phase 1.
Stephen, what's that? The OK Railroad Trail? I don't recall. Is that a new phrase?
It'd be Diamond Crest Park. It's
Okay,
just
okay.
renamed for
Got it.
grant purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, or attractive grant purposes. As you work down the table, I talked about the stormwater assessment that we approved earlier this year, the stormwater plan. The projects shown in green reflect our prioritization and input of stormwater projects, and starting to work on Stone Bridge in 2024, Dundee Road in 2025. And then the Park and Stormwater Sales Tax going to help pay for Riverwalk Park and Trail. Looking at the next 3 years following that, we have stormwater projects addressed in the Forest Oaks neighborhood, Forest Oaks, Cedar Lake, and then Maple Lane. And then we also start in our Smiths Fork Park Complex design and engineering and construction in 2028. So that $2.2 million is the first phase of the Smiths Fork Park Complex, and that'd be our first signature park that we would work on for the Parks Master Plan. We've been saving up funds to pay cash for that project, and we're still anticipating that we'll be in a good fiscal shape to pay for that. Go to the next slide here. You can see we save up in fund balance in the yellow bar, working all the way to 2027. And then when we hit 2028, we obligate those expenses for Smiths Fork Park and spend that fund balance down. Sorry, go back a slide. Go back. There we go. Okay. Before we wrap up the CIP, I wanted to ask if there's any other questions on projects so far at this time. Okay. So when you look at the all funds total for our 5-year CIP, this is all the funds that we just looked at tonight. We have a total 5-year cost of almost $46.8 million, which is a massive investment in our infrastructure, both in our parks and our water and sewer and our streets. It's a major plan that takes a lot of work to get done, and it takes a lot of resources. Next year in 2024, it's almost a $13 million plan. And then in 2028, that's our largest year of this 5-year plan at almost $14 million. So one of the biggest items that the board approves this year in the budget is our 5-year plan, and especially obligating funds for next year in 2024. So to conclude, I want to make these remarks about our CIP. First one, again, those MARC grants have allowed us to take advantage of outside funding to supplement the project expenses. The work that we've done with the board and internally with staff, we've aligned all these projects to preserve adequate cash flow. The general fund is one area that we're going to look at as we go through the budget process, as we saw that declining projection. Rate adjustments will be necessary going forward to continue to fund our capital improvement projects in the water and sewer fund. We'll talk about that on July 18th. And then the last point I just wanted to say here is this 5-year CIP at 46.8 is up from the last edition of 41.8. This is a result of moving a couple really key projects into our 5-year scope, which includes the wastewater plant expansion and that Smiths Fork Park complex phase 1 construction. So really this 5-year CIP, a gain of $5 million in expense over the previous year's CIP. With that, I can take any questions that you have about our 5-year CIP as proposed to you.
Stephen, how long have you been with the city?
Since October of 2020.
Okay, so prior to this, there wasn't any of these charts or tracking. So I just want to say great job on that, putting together these projections. I think it's phenomenal. It's scary at the same time as we look on how we're going to pay this for these, but job well done. Thank you.
I think it's great that the staff is, and all the staff is looking into the future as opposed to just paying as things break. It goes to all the staff. Real good job.
Yeah, I know some of the cash flow graphs can look a little daunting how low they go, but we update these financials for you 4 times a year with the budget update. And then personally, I refresh our forecasts on a monthly basis and always look and see how those revenues are coming in, and then always work with Public Works to see what change orders are projected, what inflationary measures are occurring. So try to keep good tabs on it. Again, these things can change, but try to do a good job. Even with such low projected fund balances, we make it work. So.
Well, also on the special allocation funds, if we're gonna collect taxes, we need to spend it on infrastructure improvements that we're collecting it for, not just sit on it for years and years and years like has done in the past. Appreciate it.
Steve,
Mr. Mayor, if I could, oops, I'm sorry, Ron.
Go ahead, Cynthia, you get some.
I was just going to make a couple of clarifications. One, to echo Alderman Hartman's comments. The information that Stephen has brought forward is very useful. As Stephen indicated, we monitor this throughout the year, and based on finances, but also as new projects arise and other priorities come up, we make those adjustments and changes, and that's why we bring this to you for continual review. And just as a reminder, this is a 5-year plan. The only actual year of expenditures that are budgeted is the next fiscal year. So that is a moving target on the out years based on revenues and based on priorities at that point in time. But we at least, and one of the things that we've added to the plan is those unfunded areas so that we know those items that are outstanding. So just want to remind everyone of that information. And I do also want to thank Stephen and all of the staff for pulling together the information included in the CIP. Meyer has been a significant asset in providing this information as well.
Stephen, I have a question for you. I echo everybody on saying that you did a great job. You and your staff have done a great job on this. I just a question on the MARC funding, on the MARC project funding. Is there, we haven't accepted those funds as yet, correct? For the roundabout and the 2 sidewalk, the Riverwalk and the 2nd Street.
We haven't received the funds, but we did approve resolutions that I believe that would be taking the funding. And we've also paid a project fee.
As a
Administration.
As a 1%, was 1%, wasn't that what that was? 1% project fee? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and so if we were to say we don't want to build these anymore, what was to be the ramifications to the city, money wise, financially wise?
I think it would be losing out first and foremost on the project fee that we've paid in. If you have anything to add to that, Cynthia, but
We'd lose the project fee. I would also anticipate that in future discussions with Mark, our projects would be seen in a less positive light because we weren't able to follow through on a project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Stephen? With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Stand adjourned, give you all 5 minutes. You can have a bathroom break or anything.